Hey everybody, welcome to episode 9 of GSX. In today's episode we're going to be doing taxiway signs and naming as well as runway signs. And it's probably, most of you probably don't care. It's a very minute thing that honestly most people wouldn't place. But seeing as how I want this to be a really realistic airport, it's a sort of a crucial piece and it does bring a really good amount of realism. And basically, so what the signs are, so there's a location sign, which is yellow lettering on a black background, and then an information, I think it's called an information sign, which is black lettering on a yellow background. And so here, for example, we have taxiway, it's showing the pilot that they're on taxiway alpha, and that on the left is taxiway, I forget what W is, whatever, taxiway W is on the left. And basically what I'm showing here is actually, I found this trick with cinematic camera extended, where if you set the field of view to 20, you can actually zoom in a lot more, and it lets you sort of place the signs really precisely, which is what I did. That's probably what most of my time was spent on. I had to get them perfectly aligned, and they look great at night too. They have an illumination map, so they do look like actual signs, which is pretty awesome. Now, some of you may be interested in how I actually planned the naming out. It's not random. Each taxiway actually has a name. I took an overhead shot of the airport, and then I went into Paint and I named each taxiway, and then from there I sort of could actually put down the signs just sort of to organize myself a little better. So that was fun. And here's another example of an intersection, I guess. So right now this is taxiway Bravo, and then it's at an intersection with taxiway Sierra. So basically you'd have the location sign in the middle, and then on each side you'd have the information signs. So for the Sierra taxiway on the left, you'd have the arrow pointing to it. It's basically, you look from the top and then the arrows sort of represent that. It's not that complicated, I think. And then here's an interesting thing, because this taxiway intersection, it's a 5-way intersection, and I call it the star because there's so many lines that it sort of draws out a star. And it's just, I guess I left this in just to show you how I do this. Basically, this is taxiway Zulu, so Z. That's the phonetic alphabet, by the way. That's what they use. And then from there we sort of go clockwise from the sign, and every taxiway it hits, that's like where you put them. I guess that's the best way I can explain. Again, it's a very tedious process, and for the most part unnecessary unless you're going for an extremely realistic airport like I am. Yeah, I don't know. Most of you are probably watching this because you're interested, but if you have the time, I'd suggest doing it, because then when you actually look at your airport, it does look real, because the signs do bring out a lot. Now, sometimes at a complicated intersection like this intersection, what airports do is they put a location sign on the other side of the, on the other side of the intersection as well, just so pilots, when they're coming up to it, they see that, oh, okay, there's the other taxiway right there, so when they cross it, they know for sure that they're going on the right taxiway. And so yeah, that's what it is. And if you do that, you have to remove it from the actual sign because it's already on the other side. Now, although it's best to keep sign placement consistent on the same side, it doesn't really matter. So for example, here, as you can see, we have the double dashed yellow line, which means that that's a movement area. Planes can cross into there, and you don't want a sign there because planes can run over it and break their gear or whatever. So you can move it onto the left, like right here. And each side of the plane, there's a pilot, and then there's a co-pilot. So it doesn't really matter what side you put it on. Now right here you can see that taxiway Alpha actually goes behind runway 27 left, which is bad because there can be a plane on that taxiway while there's a plane on approach, on final, and so they can crash, which is bad. So what you do is you make an approach zone. And basically, the way I marked out mine is I took a line and I put it 30 degrees to the runway and I stretched it out as far as I can. And basically, wherever that line is, if it crosses a taxiway, then you put a hold short marking right there, this line, and then you put some approach signs, which you'll see me put down in a second. And it's just for safety, really. And just to clarify, the actual line that I'm putting, it's from the threshold bar. It's not from the actual end of the runway, it's from the threshold bar because I have a displaced threshold, which is basically, in case you don't know what it is, it's an area that can be used for takeoff, but not for landing. If it's on the other side, it can be, it doesn't matter. Anyway, it's from the threshold bar, and then you can see that I'm putting the approach signs here, which basically just indicate that that's an approach zone and planes should stop at this line if there's a plane approaching and if ATC instructs them to. So obviously this is a more technical episode, and I'm sorry, I know some of you apparently don't really like the airport that much, but that is sort of my main focus for now, if you haven't noticed. I don't know, I've been planning this for a long time and I'm really happy with how it's turning out, so I want to keep doing it. But obviously there will be still some more videos on the city. In fact, I still have a ton of ideas of stuff I want to do there, but I'm doing the airport because it's what I like to do, and I think that's probably the best way to do YouTube. And then you can see here, basically, I'm showing that it's an approach for 27 left. You don't need to put the 09 right. I removed that later. You'll see that it should only say 27 left because it's the end of the runway. If it's right at the end, if it's past the threshold bar, you don't need to. But if it's anywhere in front of the threshold bar, then you have to put the entire runway name, which is kind of, yeah, it's a bit annoying, but whatever. You can see that the end's right there. You only need to put the actual numbering for that end. You don't need to put the entire runway. Now something else that we have to do is runway entrance signs, which is basically just signs saying that it's white lettering on a red background, and it indicates that there's a runway right there. It's red, so it's really bright, and obviously it indicates danger. So we're saying that right now the pilot is on Taxiway Yankee, and that they're approaching 27 left, and that's the hold short line for 27 left. And here you can see that the actual sign, the location sign, the Y, yellow Y on a black background, that should actually be, it should surround the sign. So basically on the left side of the taxiway, that should be on the left, and then on the right side of the taxi, that should be on the right. And then behind these signs, you put basically a sign indicating that there's a hold short line right there, but it faces the runway, so that when pilots are leaving the runway, they can see that there's a hold short line there, and it tells them that they are basically past the runway at that point. I'm sorry, most of you probably don't care about this, but if you do, let me know, because I can keep talking about this if people are interested, and if not, then I can try and explain it in the simplest form. And then, like I said, the ground signs, these are put next to the enhanced center line, which is you can see it right there in the middle. And because this is an end of a runway, this is 27 left, you only need to put 27 left. You don't need to put the entire runway number. Now, if you don't want to do all that and you want some basic form of signage, then here's something you can do. Basically, there are signs called runway distance signs, and they're placed every 1,000 feet on whatever side of the runway the most of them can be on, but the preferred arrangement is for them to be on the left side of the runway in perspective to the most used direction of the runway. So for example, you could see the arrows. Let's say the way the arrows are pointing, that's the most used side for takeoff and landing. Then the signs would be on the left. And here I'm putting them on the right because I think that's where the least of them were blocked by, because some of them end up being on taxiways. And if they're on taxiways, then you can just move them to the closest point off of the taxiway so they don't interfere. And so what I'm doing here is basically precision engineering. If you hold shift, it can it tells you the specific measurement in meters, and you want to get it basically just under 305 meters, so it's 304.8 is 1,000 feet. And then you take the runway distance signs and you place them down basically. So let's say we were looking down from the beginning of the runway towards the end, and it was 8,000 feet total. So you'd have 8, and then it would keep getting smaller and smaller as you get towards the end of the runway until you get to 0. And that's it for this episode. Obviously, like I said, it's very technical. So if you like this kind of stuff, technical stuff, please let me know, because I don't know how many of you are actually interested in this kind of stuff, and I can sort of gauge what I'm talking about depending on that. If you like this kind of content, why not let me know? Leave a like or a dislike, or leave a comment. That's even better. A comment is better. And consider subscribing, because this is I do mostly City Skylines videos. And yeah, see you next time.
$50, $40, $30, $20, retard, $10.
Terrain, pull up,